Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversation at Home program. I'm Angelique Jackson, Senior Entertainment Writer at Variety. And before we are joined by our guests today, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given nearly $7 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. If you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our two Emmy-nominated actresses here with me now. We have Anya Taylor-Joy, who plays Beth Harmon, and Moses Ingram, who stars as Jolene in Netflix's critically acclaimed limited series, The Queen's Gambit. Welcome to you both. We're so excited to talk more about the series with y'all.
Thank you.
Excited too. Thanks for having us.
Well, I did mention the Emmys. The Queen's Gambit was already an instant hit, one of Netflix's most watched series, and now you have 18 nominations to show for it. What does it mean to have so much love for this cast as a whole and all the work that you guys put in? Anya, I'll start with you.
I think that's the most exciting thing. It's all of us, and we've never had the opportunity to celebrate together. And hopefully, if things are still going the way that they're going, we actually get to all be in a room together and just enjoy that and feel each other's energy around that. So, yeah. And I will say, I texted Moses this, the shriek that I had for Moses's nomination and Thomas was just like, that's the best part.
Moses, what did it sound like on your end of that text? Was the shriek equal?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, it was completely like unexpected. It's like, yeah, it was way more than unexpected. It was like triply, infinitingly unexpected. Yeah.
Well, even beyond the nominations and beyond the awards, because of course there's been Critics' Choice, Golden Globe, SAG Award love for this show as well. This show has really made an impact on the chess community. There have been tons of reports about massive spikes in chess set sales. How did it feel to have so many people connect and discover the game through this show? Anya, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I think it's so much fun. It's so wonderful. And it's really wonderful, too, that it's not just the show seems to have appealed to a wide variety of ages. And that's really fun because it's fun to hear, people in their early 20s say, oh, I'm going to go play this guy at chess. It's going to be really hot. Like, that is just, it's a sentence I never thought I would hear. And it's always joyful.
And of course, Beth and Jolene's stories are about more than chess. These are these two young women coming of age. We get a chance, Anya, really to see you play Beth through this decade, and Jolene and Moses, you played Jolene as a young child and as an adult. So when it comes to their evolutions, what stands out to you most, and what are some things that people have said to you about their journeys that really means the most?
Moses, you wanna jump in?
The thing that stands out to me the most, I think one of the things that was most interesting to me in dissecting that gap was who Jolene returns as. And I just, in my mind, was like, all of the things she must have went through to get to that point, to like wearing her hair and to standing tall, like at this door, was such a grand moment to me. And I think the biggest thing was how confident she was in her adult life, that I'm sure she wasn't, as a kid with like those raggedy braids. And I think in that gap of time, how they were able to maintain sort of this non-tangible part of their relationship that was able to still hold true through time and them coming back together. So it's sort of like this, I don't know, living thread that sort of goes all the way through time, I guess, for me.
And Anya, for you?
They still have this kind of dynamic of Jolene's kind of showing Beth the way, because from my point of view anyway, it's kind of like she recognizes that Beth is this strange little creature and wants to help her out. And throughout the years that they spend apart, Beth is trying to find herself and she's trying to figure it out. But when Jolene comes back into her life, it's still that dynamic. It's still Jolene that's able to look at her and through knowing her origins is able to say, hey, you need to sort your shit out. Essentially, like, this is not, what is it, Moses? It's you're at the bottom of a well that you've dug yourself. I think that's...
Yeah, it looks like you're at the bottom of a fucking hole and you put yourself there.
Yeah. So they have this wonderful natural quality to the way that they communicate, where I think they have to really present to other people and it's just not there. So the scenes themselves were really, really wonderful to shoot.
Yeah.
It's kind of this interesting representation of what real friendship looks like between women and young women, because it often is that situation where it may be somebody you don't see for years, but they just pop back into your life and it's almost like you picked up where you left off. But let's actually rewind a little bit to how you both got into the Queen's Gambit. And truly, even before that, because this audience is made up of your fellow SAG-AFTRA members, how you both got your SAG card. So, Anya, I'll go to you first. What was the role that got you your SAG card?
The role that got me my SAG card, goodness, I think it might have even been my first day on set ever. I was a day player on a movie called Vampire Academy. I'm not in the film, but I remember showing up on set and just thinking, oh, let me do this forever. Just please, this is the greatest thing of all time. So yeah, I think that was my first ever day on set, Vampire Academy. Yeah.
What was it about that set that made you feel like I want to do this forever?
It's something that I really connect with Beth on. I think both of us didn't feel like we made sense in the world that we were finding ourselves in. And as a kid, I just had this dream that there was a magical place where I would feel included and where I would have something to contribute. And my first day on set, it just reinstated the fact that that was a real place and I wasn't crazy for hoping that that place existed. So once I had found it, I definitely never wanted to leave.
Well, we also never want you to leave. Over to you. What was that role? How did you first get your SAG card?
I got my SAG card on the Queen's Gambit. That was my introduction into everything. And like, I was fresh out of school and my first job was like Germany. And so it was like all like super wild. And like my first day on set, like pulling up, like I wasn't even working, but Scott was like, you have to meet Anya. So we came outside. I think we were in Toronto at that point and shooting these big street scenes. And there were like buses like trapped in time and cars and people. And it was shocking to see, like to be in the movies. And I wasn't even like on that day, but like, when you dream of something forever and then you're finally standing in the middle of it, is really overwhelming and beautiful. So I feel blessed.
Anya, what do you remember about that first meeting between the two of y'all?
Just that you would never know that she was nervous. Like Moses has such a beautiful energy to be around and she embodied Jolene. So yeah, girl, come on. Like, yes, 100%. It's like she has this really beautiful confidence and you kind of feel things go a little quiet when you're enveloped in it, which I really enjoy because I like my quiet.
Well, I'm going to say that Anya makes it very easy. So sorry to cut you off.
I think the most fun part of
good.
I think your relationship on screen clearly translated off screen as well.
Well, I was about to say, I think during our first meeting, I thought, oh, this is not going to be hard. Like we're good. Like this is going to be really fun to do. And it's not going to be hard to feign this connection, which is always a good feeling to have as an actor and a good feeling to have as a person as well.
That kind of leads me to my next question, which is that same idea where, you know, your Emmy nominated casting director, Ellen Lewis, did the casting for the show, but it feels like you both were born to play these roles a bit. So, can you talk about your audition process for the Queen's Gambit and, you know, how quickly you recognized yourself in Beth and in Jolene? Moses, I'm going to go over to you first.
Um, it came to me like everything else does, sort of like in my email, and I went down to the office and just put it on tape. It was like 3 minutes. Everybody was super nice, and then we left, and I didn't think much of it. I remember reading it the first time and thinking to myself, "Oh, these words, they feel easy. Like I'm not working very hard to like make them feel like they're mine." And I thought that was super beautiful. Like I didn't have a script or anything at that point. And then I was saying that Scott wanted to meet. And I met with Scott, and Scott was wonderful and just like so easygoing. For me, it was like this like big like job interview, and he was just so laid back and easy, almost as if looking back, like he already knew in some way. I mean, in some way, obviously he's a director, he knows what he wants to do, but yeah. And then a couple days after that, I had the job, and that was it.
It's a history. Anya, what about when you first read Beth? What stuck out to you about her?
Oh, goodness. I was working on two jobs at the same time, and my brain was semi-exploded. And I got an email that Scott Frank wanted to meet with me on something that didn't have a script, but there was a book. And I was a big fan of Scott's, and I just thought, okay, like I'll sit down, I'll read the book, and I'll give it my best shot. And from the second I opened that book, I was just in like the most exquisite pain because it was so deeply resonant, and I understood this woman so well. And I just remember I finished reading it in about like an hour and a half. I just closed the book and I ran, like physically ran to meet Scott, like through the park, through all of Marylebone, ran into this restaurant and just like screamed at him, essentially. I was like, it's not about chess and she has to have red hair. And he didn't commit me, and he gave me a job, which I'm very grateful for. But yeah, it felt pretty faced. Like we all just had the exact same ideas. And we were all making the same show, which you'd be surprised how rare that is.
I mean, I feel like audiences really picked up on those intricacies, the things that probably stood out to you in the book, the way that these women that are drawn in this really complex way, but also in this very realistic way where, yes, this is a woman who is, you know, showcasing her skills in a predominantly male field of chess, but she's also going through all of the different stages of life and things that, you know, make being a woman super complicated. So as you kind of traveled through Beth's journey, you know, what really stood out to you about the way those elements of her life were portrayed?
Something I think is very beautiful about the way that the story has connected with audiences is that Beth is an inherently lonely character. She is somebody that feels like she is very other and doesn't necessarily find that many safe harbors to just kind of hang out in. She maybe stays there for a second, but she's constantly being taken out to sea again. And a thought that I had a lot whilst particularly charting the way that she grew up was that existential loneliness is something that everybody feels, so that inherently makes it not lonely. And I think that was, I don't know, I think it helped me figure out or rethink about the way that I grew up. It helped me, I don't know, there's just something about a universal story about somebody that everyone can connect with that just makes you feel less alone. And I thought that was pretty beautiful. And I felt very lucky that Scott was not just so open to, but so like willing to go into the intricacies of that, especially with things that potentially he didn't have as much experience in, like the wardrobe. It is very important that we are showcasing somebody trying on different personalities in order to find themselves in it, because that is something that people will really connect with. And yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but I tried.
No, it absolutely did. And I love that you mentioned the wardrobe and the costumes because while they are so beautiful, it's trying on different skins, trying to fit into different places. You see her at the department store when she, finally has that first check, and instead of wearing kind of the clothes that, Alma bought her and we're like, these are kind of fine. She's like, why don't I try to fit in with the cool girls and maybe they'll notice me, and then she gets in with them and is like, maybe I don't want to be here after all. So when it came to the costuming, oh no, please go ahead.
Oh no. I was just saying, she's like, she walks into that space and she's like, I'm good. I'll leave.
I think that's something that so many people identify with in the show too, is like when the show came out, everybody was in their own little sequestered space. And it's very much a show about like how to be with yourself and how to cope. And I think a lot of people identify with that feeling with where we were, in time.
Moses, for you with Jolene, we talked a bit about playing her in these two different stages of her life. What was imperative to figuring out who she was in these two different ages?
Definitely memories, imaginary memories. Like I could sit and daydream for hours about things that have never happened. And I think in my work, I think it's the most fruitful thing for me to, put myself in places and remember things. And so when it comes back to a place, even if no one else has seen the things, I've seen the things, right? And I only hope that it comes through in what I'm doing with whoever I'm doing them with.
What was one of the things that you imagined with the Jolene that we see in the orphanage? What was some of the backstory that you gave the character to make her who she was in those scenes?
I think one of the biggest things for me was like, I know that like being young at that particular age is weird on its own. And then being the only person that looks like you in that place, like how you must feel about yourself. So I just sort of imagined like the first time somebody told her that, like she was beautiful, and then like, you know, she sort of started to like have a back and like stand up a little taller and like feel good about herself and like learn about herself. And also too, like what it must have been like watching this like monstrous trajectory of someone you love, but from a distance, that feeling of you like, when you have a best friend and you separate, and it's weird because you're watching them and you know everything about them, but now there are these parts of their life that you don't know. And so sort of like coming back into the place and like, it's like a fine line of like getting to know them again, but like already knowing them so much. It's a very human thing, I guess. I don't know.
Absolutely. We all have that friend that we've lost touch with that, you see them on social media and you're trying
Yeah.
to, what's going on with them, but you don't really know them anymore. And you run into them in the
Yeah.
store one day and you're like, oh, okay, where do we go?
I know all your secrets.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anya, for you, you're playing Beth in this space where, from the outside, everything looks like it's going so amazing and she's winning all of these chess tournaments, but she has this internal struggle. And then, of course, the somewhat more external struggle with her dependency on the pills and alcohol. So, walk me through that part of the journey and figuring out, the different ways of bringing Beth kind of like, into that safe harbor and then back out to sea as we see through these episodes.
It was incredibly important to both Scott and I, and we actually had this conversation the first time that we ever met, that every chess game had to be different, but at the same time, every substance scene had to be very different, because we had to try and communicate what it was that Beth was needing at that time. So is she drinking because she's excited and she thinks that this is a celebration? Is she drinking because she's terribly sad and she just wants the feelings to stop and she's overwhelmed? Is she taking the pills in this moment because she truly thinks she can't win without them? Or is it an act of self-destruction? And I think that was just incredibly important to building a more three-dimensional image of this individual, because I do think, and it is something that we're all kind of dealing with today with social media, it's like the presentation of something can look so shiny, but it's just never the truth. You cannot have the light without the dark, and it is an incredibly isolating experience to be so lauded so young, you know. And I think I was also very thrilled to be able to tell that with the vehicle of a young woman, because I think we get a lot of like tortured male geniuses, and people kind of just applaud that and they go, yes, okay, he's an asshole, but like he's a genius, whilst women are either called hot messes or thrown aside, and you don't get to hear those stories. I don't know. I think it was important that we had all of the different nuances in every single scene.
Absolutely. I think that is a very important point, that idea of, you know, with women characters, it is very much often boxed in where you either have to be, you know, the Madonna or not. And it's an interesting concept of this idea. Well, it's not really even a concept. It is a major step forward that we're getting a character like this where we're able to see her in all of her facets and colors. Did playing this character, and really this is a question for both of you, but playing these characters throughout the ages and throughout the decades, how did it affect your acting techniques? Was there anything you did differently or any new skills that you learned to kind of pull off those different sides? Anya, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I was thrilled to get to spend so much time. The first conversation that I had with Scott was like, so how young can you play her? And I was like, well, not at 8, Scott. Like, you might think I'm good, but like, I'm not that good. But I was so thrilled because similarly to Moses, my preparation is just spending time in her head. It's just getting to know how someone walks into a room, what their resting expression is, like what do they look like when there's nobody around them, when they're not performing for anybody, what does that look like? And sometimes little things will just happen without you necessarily making a choice. And the first day on set in Toronto, we did a week in Toronto before we went out to Germany. It was Beth at 15, and I started doing this little waddle, and immediately I was like, oh, she's gonna have a walking journey. And I'm going to do a different walk the whole way through. And this is so exciting. I geeked out. I majorly geeked out acting-wise with all the different little physical things that I could do to show her getting older. And I had so much fun. I had such a good time. Moses.
I guess for me, it was actually being surrounded by children. And like all of the time, like they would be like talking to me and they were like, guys, you don't understand. Like I'm an adult. I'm like, and they'd be like, oh yeah, Moses, like, sure. I'm like, no, really. But it was really fun to sort of just like really just mirror them in a lot of ways, you know, when we're in the room and talking and playing off of each other. And that was really fun for me.
Absolutely. I mean, these are the little tidbits that make these, you know, these characters sing, is that idea that, you know, you're able to find these quirks and these intricacies about them that, you know, make them different from anything anybody has ever seen. Can we talk a little bit about your ensemble? Some of the actors that we don't, of course, have here with us today, but just this incredible cast from Mariel Heller to Bill Camp and Thomas Brody Sangster, Harry Melling. You know, what are some of your favorite memories of working with this ensemble? And what are a couple things maybe you learned from them? Something you picked up from somebody that you're taking with you to the next job?
A favorite memory is definitely the first time I saw Thomas's costume. It provided such entertainment for me. And he was so gung-ho about it. Like, I think I think he has the best wardrobe potentially like, that's what I wanted to walk out with. I wanted to walk out with the cowboy hat and the big leather coat. He was so down and so much fun to play with. And I loved all of our scenes. And in terms of walking away with something, working with Mari is fascinating because she spent the majority of the time recently being a director. So there was definitely a moment where I suddenly looked up and I was like, I'm performing for 2 directors right now, and I don't quite know where to look at this exact moment. But I have such an avid interest in film and in every department in film that it was really fun to be able to problem solve in that way. Like, it's a very community orientated set. Everybody pitches in and everyone figures things out and figures problems out together. So yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Real quick, on that topic of Thomas's costume, it really does feel like the costumes, we talked about this a little bit a moment ago, but how much those costumes did inform the characters. Is there a particular costume of each of yours that stands out or that one that, I know you guys had some input and some discussion about what you thought they should wear and how the clothes should fit. Is there one in particular that really stands out to you that you want to highlight?
I think just from sentimentality, I really love Beth receiving Mr. Wheatley at the door in Alma Wheatley's costume. I think I like that aspect of her. I like that she goes for the gut punch in that. But all of the costumes are so wonderful, and Gabrielle was really so giving in her understanding of how connected I think we all felt to these characters, and really allowing us to have our own input and to bring our ideas into it, but also just fitting it on the body and seeing what naturally worked and what was rejected. And she never fought something that was rejected by the actor.
Moses, for you?
Yeah, I think the look, what you put on your body, it is so much of who you are, and it changes everything you do, like, once you put it on. I think one of my favorite looks for me, I only have like 3 or 4, but I think my favorite one was the funeral scene. Like, I had these pants that were made especially to fit my body, and this black turtleneck just felt very grown in a way that I hadn't felt grown, And of course, the afro was just like super proud and like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely represents who she has become. Like you said before, even just that evolution from the braids to the afro signifies, this whole new path of life for Jolene.
So new, sort of like going from wallflower, though I don't believe Jolene has ever truly been a wallflower, but like from there to like this blossoming, I think. Yeah.
Well, I know that fans, of course, have been talking about this series now for some time, but what is one thing that people haven't touched on yet about this show that you have been just waiting for someone to mention or bring up? What is the thing that you're like, nope, nobody picked up on that thing? Something that you've been just dying for folks to ask you about?
Oh, goodness.
They could have got everything.
People are smart. They pick up on a lot. But for some reason, what randomly came into my head was actually something that people do pick up on, which I've had a lot of people be very angry with me, Anya, for Beth not paying Mr. Scheibel back. Like, mad. Very angry with me. And I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. She was on a lot of drugs. Like, it was confusing. I don't think she knew how to address that. But yeah, I think that's something that I get yelled at across the street sometimes. Why didn't you pay him back? I'm like, I'm sorry. It was in the script. It was in the book. I'm sorry.
I don't have a good answer for that either. I'm with you. I don't think I would know what to say.
Yeah, I don't have a great answer. I was like, sorry. She was going through it at the time, but you're right. It was not great. Not great on her behalf.
To that point of Beth not paying people back, a lot of people ask me, why didn't she pay you back? Or did she pay you back? That's a question I get a lot. Does she pay you back? Yeah.
And that's
I hope so. Like,
I would think so.
I really hope so.
I absolutely
think
think she did. I think so.
seeing as this is a limited series, what do you imagine happens at the end? How do you imagine these characters, story actually wraps up outside of the confines of these 7 episodes? Are they still friends at the end? Is there a big homecoming when she comes back? They roommates?
God.
I don't know about you, Moses. I've literally only just thought about this now, but like, I really hope they go on some cool road trips together. I feel like the two of them would have a really good time, just like traveling around.
God.
And hopefully Beth is like, what I love about where we leave her in the story is that she's at some kind of peace with herself. And I hope that she learns how to enjoy herself without wrecking herself. And I feel like Jolene's a really good bud in that department. But what do you think, babe?
Yeah, man. I think Jolene is out there kicking ass and taking names. One day at a time, I guess,
I think
but I do think sorry, what were you saying?
Please go ahead.
No, but I was gonna say I do think I think the bond is restored, I don't think there are gonna be any more stints of great distance for the two of them in the future.
Yeah, maybe she becomes this big hotshot attorney and just casually gives Beth some legal advice from time to time when they
From time to time. Slight work, you know what I mean?
I have a weird feeling that Beth ends up in Russia. I think she likes it over there.
You think she moves to Russia?
Sense. I think she spends a large amount of time in Russia. I think, yeah. I hope that she and Benny work things out, because I think the two of them together are so funny. It's really enjoyable for me. So I hope that she and Benny like work something out. But I can see Beth hanging around Russia for a while.
Well, at the end of the day, I mean, like you said, it feels like these two women very much find themselves and find some peace within themselves after this long journey. What would you say are some lessons that you hope that the audience takes away from The Queen's Gambit? I mean, I feel like a lot of people have really glommed onto just how incredibly strong and well-drawn these women are, and how they have these great independent arcs from a lot of the men, even though they're an important part of things. What do you hope that people take away?
To forgive yourself, because when you know better, you do better. Sometimes you just don't know, and like that has to be okay, because there aren't rule books for things, and we figure them out as we go, and that you don't have to be tortured to be a genius. Like, you can come to a place within yourself eventually at some point where you can be with yourself and be with everything that you are, and love yourself, outside of those things, and sort of begin to understand that those things, don't make you who you are, aren't necessarily who you are, but like, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Listen, Simone Biles just said it. You're not your accomplishments, you're your person.
Yeah.
And this definitely teaches you that. Anya, for you?
Similarly, I think, Moses made a really good point about the timing of when the show came out. And I think a lot of people were being confronted with themselves, where in the quote unquote normal world, you are able to distract yourself a bit more. I love that Beth's greatest opponent was herself, because I think that is true for a lot of people. And I think in learning how to be with yourself, how to be kind to yourself, I'll forever be grateful to her and to this experience for teaching me a bit more of that, but also the fact that I think when you spend so much time in your own head, sometimes it can be really difficult to see past your own nose. And I think Beth really doesn't realize that she has a great amount of support, and you do need other people in that way as well. You have to be open to allowing that love and that help. I was going to make a cheesy chess metaphor, but I won't do that. I think everyone can kind of piece that together themselves.
Do it.
You see what you
Like, yes, there's like one queen, but you need to have all the different pieces on the board to play the game. Like, that's the way it's got to work.
That's the way it goes.
Don't be shy with the chess metaphors. I almost called y'all two Emmy-nominated queens. to open this up. We could have done more chess puns. What were we thinking?
It's brilliant.
Well, the last question for the two of you, this is really, just the beginning. Your careers are both continuing to explode after this. Without giving too much away, can you talk a little bit about what you have next and in the sense of that, what it was from this project that you have taken into those next projects that you are working on right now? Moses, I'll start with you.
So I have, I'm in The Tragedy of Macbeth, which premieres at the New York Film Festival in September, which is really exciting. It's been like almost 2 years now, so like that'll be like super cool. And then, like the Star Wars filming is currently happening, and like that's super crazy. So it's like, it's just a really wild, really exciting time. And I will be taking everything I learned from my first set, my inaugural set, with me everywhere I go. It's pretty much laid the foundation for how I work, and it was a beautiful way to start with a beautiful group of people. It's been so great to watch you flourish and have this whole journey. I'm sorry, but yes, it's been beautiful to watch you do all this. So yeah.
Well, Anya, what are you taking into your next projects? What's something you learned from Beth that is influencing what you're doing next?
Oh, goodness. This is going to make me sound crazy, and I'm semi-okay with that because it is kind of insane. The year of 2019, I shot 3 movies back to back with a day off in between. And at the beginning of that, starting with Emma, and then culminating in the Queen's Gambit. And at the beginning of that, I remember really thinking like, this is nuts. Like I'm going to die. There's no way that I can do this again. And I'm going to do it again for a couple of years. So I think what I'm taking from it is on the Queen's Gambit, I learned how to take care of my body in a way that I have never done before. I learned to go to bed early and to eat vegetables and to just give myself a bit more of a shot at feeling okay. So it's practical. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. But also just that it's really, when you're surrounded by good people, that feeds you so much, and I remember there were days on the Queen's Gambit where I'd go home and I'd just be obsessively texting Scott, like, it just has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. And I'd never really been that way about a character before. And he was just like, give yourself a break. Like, it's okay. You don't actually have time to stress about this right now because you're getting picked up in 6 hours to do it again. So just chill out, eat pizza, like have a bath. So yeah, I, again, tried to answer the question. Sorry.
You answered the question beautifully, because that is, I think, what you said before, what I think a lot of us have taken away from this show is, yeah, you've got to give yourself a little grace. I do not have a great chess pun. I really was trying to get ready to wrap this up, but we did our best. Like we're giving ourselves grace. So on behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation, I do want to thank you both for sharing your experiences, your process, your craft, and really some truly practical advice for your fellow performers. And congratulations on behalf of us to you.
Yay. Thank you.